Okay, moment of truth. I've never seen a Tarantino film. I know, don't come for me. I know you can't call yourself a true film lover if you've never watched a Tarantino movie, but this week we're changing that. Okay. Hello, welcome back to the Creative Spark. We've had 2 weeks off. However, I have just watched two. I went from having watched no Tarantino films to have watched two in 2 weeks. I started with Pulp Fiction and then I figured, you know what? Let's just keep going. The other one on my list was Django Unchained. And so now I've watched it and I am surprised to say I think I like Tarantino films. I honestly, under no circumstances, expected to like these movies. I'm not a gore person. I know that there's a lot of blood. There's a lot of like questionable storylines. Was an interesting experience. I know that yeah, that Tarantino does stuff for the shock factor. And yeah, I've never had the urge to watch a Tarantino film. I've just never been that interested. However, he's obviously known as one of the best directors and writers of the 21st century. Like he's so well known and I was like I have to obviously watch one. I really enjoyed them. I'm confused by that. There are definitely some questionable parts that I was like not sure about that. However, overall, I see what people are talking about. He creates engaging movies. He uses excellent like visuals, but also his writing is clever. It's so I was going to say inspired, but it's so clever the way he writes. Then chooses his direction. Honestly, the blood gore part of it didn't bother me because it's so over the top. Like the splattering, like it's obviously so not real the way it's done. Um, it's for the shock factor. My question, like the parts that I had issues with were other things. Yeah, the blood didn't and the violence of it was so yeah, over the top that it's not like watching it's not so intense until there are bits where it's the understated violent moments that were that hit a bit hard. So let's talk individual movies. I watched Pulp Fiction first, so let's start there. I surprisingly enjoyed this, and my favorite parts were the John Travolta, Samuel L. Jackson, and Uma Thurman parts of the film. For me, the part of the movie that I took issue was the middle Bruce Willis part. That part I just went, like I'm like, was that actually necessary? Like, was it necessary for the storyline to have white supremacists, a black man? Yes, a black man. We're not talking about this in depth because it's just not my area. I don't want to talk about it. But yeah, I was just like that. For me, that whole bit just felt really kind of unnecessary and just done for shock factor. Like the difference between watching that and watching Django Unchained, like Django Unchained is actually obviously it's not completely historically accurate, I would say, but like still it is based in a time that was inherently violent and that stuff happened. Like that stuff happened. Obviously it's not based in truth, but like that stuff did happen to people on plantations. Like it was up like really badly. So like all the violent and like all the acts in that film felt like it was necessary to move the plot along. Whereas like this in Pulp Fiction, that middle chunk of the film just felt like it was done for the shock. It didn't feel like it actually had a point to the storyline. Whereas, but then again, Pulp Fiction doesn't have a massive overlying storyline. It's like three little storiettes with all the characters kind of like intertwining in their stories. So yeah, obviously very different films, but I think there's a difference between having shock factor for just for the sake of it, and having something really intensely, but that moves that is integral to the storyline. So, like the two comparisons I have, I don't actually think I'm going to be able to talk about these separately because I have a lot of things that intertwined with both of them after watching them kind of not back to back, but in the same time sort of time period. Was yeah, the that middle section with Bruce Willis in Pulp Fiction versus the um the part that I couldn't watch in Django Unchained was with the dogs. So when the man was ripped apart by dogs, like that was too much. Like I couldn't I skipped that. And then when the German was having flashbacks of it later, I was like, oh, I can't skip that. I was like, because it was just like little moments. I was like, oh, I was like, too much, too much, too much. But yeah, parts that I really enjoyed. One, I loved that, and people have talked about this before. Like people just say yes to doing Tarantino movies, and they will do the tiniest cameos, just like random people that pop up that you're like, what? Like that is like. Also, like someone explained to me why Amber Tamblyn did a 15-second cameo in that movie, like in Django Unchained. I was like, oh, it's Amber Tamblyn, and then she just doesn't appear again. And I was like, did you have a bigger role and the part got cut because of time? The movie was 2 hours and 45 minutes. I'm not entirely sure, but yeah, I enjoyed all the cameos for different people. It's fun to see everyone just kind of pop up and you'd be like, that's just fun. Like people just go to do a Tarantino. They're like, yeah, I'll come to do a 15-second cameo. Why not? That's the reputation and the type of sets that Tarantino builds. Like people just want to come and do that, which is kind of amazing. And yeah, my favorite parts from Pulp Fiction was Samuel L. Jackson's speech at the end in his part in the third part of the film when he keeps doing this speech based on a part of the Bible. And he sort of does it once as a practice speech and then he does it again when it's like he's actually like experiencing it and feels it. And like that speech he does resonate, like it didn't resonate, but it was just like you could feel it. You could feel it on a cellular level, like how intense he was feeling that moment, and just shows how much of an excellent actor Samuel L. Jackson is. That was never in question. That man is very good. He was phenomenal in Django Unchained. I was like, what? I was like, his character, like Steven in Django Unchained, being the black man who was raised on a plantation and quite literally thinks that black people are lower than dirt, yet he is the right hand man of the man who owns the plantation and he was raised to be like that. So it's like Stockholm syndrome to like a next level. Like I'm sure there's another term for that in historical times, historical in in history. I'm sure. I'm just gonna stop. Whenever I get to really intense, like serious stuff, I just don't know what to say. I'm like, because I'm watching some very intense movies, and I'm just sort of watching them with my eyes. Like I'm not going and doing the in-depth research on each film and like the history and the directors, and like I'm learning a lot more about each of them. But yeah, I'm not deep diving into all of it. So I never want to speak too much on like serious issues because I'm like, I don't know what to say or what is the correct way to say it. So we're just going to move on. But yeah, Steven's character was excellent. He reminded me so kind of like different, but kind of like of Aunt Lydia in Handmaid's Tale in the way that it's like he just hated what he was. So he hated other things, people that were like him. Like that was always the vibe I got from Aunt Lydia in Handmaid's Tale, is that she's a woman who hates women. And he is a black man who hates black people. So his character, I think, was just the most interesting. And his acting was just like the physicality of his acting, the way he spoke, it was excellent. And also, you can't go past, obviously, the famous scene for Leonardo DiCaprio, which is the scene when everyone talks about this, that he was so into this moment in acting that he slams his hand down on a table and accidentally gets a glass. And he just keeps going. And he just keeps going. And he like cut his hand open, and you can see it quite literally bleeding down his arm. And he's just like, he doesn't even wipe it off. He just keeps going. Like, he just keeps going in the scene. And then later on, like in 2 minutes later, they end up wiping it down, Kerry washing his face. And I'm assuming after he cut his hand and they kept going with that part of the scene, they would have cut. And then obviously we're like, that's amazing. Let's work that into the scene. So yeah, it would have been so interesting being on set that day. Cause like, he obviously just kept going. Did people like, if you were like behind the scenes in that, would you be like, do we stop? Like, oh, I'm assuming everyone was probably looking at each other, being like, do we cut? Like, what do we do? Like, he's still going. Do we just leave it? Like, do we just like what? Um, it was authentic. That was authenticity in acting, being so committed and just so in the part that you cut your hand and you just made it work. Like, that's some acting chops right there. I mean, Leonardo DiCaprio is a questionable human being, but is a phenomenal actor. Like, that's what Quentin Tarantino is known for. He's like, it's not just that he is like a phenomenal writer and director. He also chooses like high caliber actors to be able to pull off his work. Like, I'm sorry, I didn't even mention Jamie Foxx. Wow, 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 wow! Just amazing. Like, I don't even have the like words to describe how good he was in Django Unchained. Django Unchained was excellent. I put it on last night at 9 p.m. because I was like, if I do not put it on now, I will keep doing this and I'll fall behind. I will already quite a few movies behind schedule. And I was like, if I don't put it on now, we're going to miss another week. And I was like, who cares if it's 9 p.m.? It's Friday. I don't have to get up tomorrow morning. Just put it on. And I got about 2/3 of the way through and finished the last hour today when I got home. And I was like, I was locked in. I would have expected from Tarantino not to be so engrossed in these movies, but like, I was locked in to both of them. I honestly expected to be like, watch the first little bit and be like, and pause, get up and do things, like be like, oh, pause, have a scroll, pause, do this. No, I didn't. I was invested. And yeah, I think I like Tarantino movies. That does not align with my personality, you would think. But I did. I really enjoyed it. I'm going to stop yapping because honestly, it's got chaotic ADHD energy today. We're a bit twirly, is all I'm going to say. I've been twirly for a week. We're going to wrap it up. I enjoyed a Tarantino movie too, actually. And I'm actually excited for whenever I get to watch more of them and see what else happens in some of his other films. So that's all from me today. Thank you for joining me on the Creative Spark and continually to follow along, continuing to follow along with my journey of my 52 movies in 52 weeks, my movie education. This one was a big one. Tarantino is a monster of like important cinema. So we ticked a big one off this one week, guys. We really did. And I'm very impressed with myself. But if you liked this video and you like movies and all things kind of pop culture, please hit the subscribe button and follow along for more videos. And I will see you next time on the Creative Spark. I'll see you next time.